After being hit by a car and suddenly forced to live in a wheelchair, my husband presented me with a completed divorce form. It's your own fault that got you in that wheelchair. I don't want to deal with the hassle of caregiving. Let's get a divorce. I have no intention of cleaning up after you. His cold words plunged me into darkness. I couldn't believe this was happening after I had supported him for 40 years. Anger flared up inside me. I am Cindy. I just celebrated my 60th birthday. I have been married to Patrick, who is 3 years my senior, for 40 years. We met during my junior college years. Back then, I looked forward to drinking coffee at the small cafe run by his parents, where he worked as a waiter, making the most of his smart appearance. He listened to my complaints with a kind ear, and I was drawn to how he would chat amiably with any customer. Over the course of a year, I made my move, and it paid off. We started dating. After I graduated from junior college, we got married. Some friends said it was too soon, but I wanted to give peace of mind to my elderly grandmother, who raised me alone after my parents were gone. As expected, my grandmother passed away before she could see her great-grandchildren. Reassured by our marriage, only my maternal uncle from a distant town became my soul flesh and blood. But I was not lonely because my in-laws treated me as if I were their own daughter. Living with my husband's parents in their home, just a 10-minute walk from the store, was not suffocating at all. It was genuinely comfortable. And I experienced family happiness firsthand. My in-laws taught me the business, both strictly and kindly, and about a year into our marriage, our lovely daughter, Megan, was born, bringing me to the peak of happiness. Soon after, as the bubble economy began, my in-laws retired, leaving the shop to us. They probably wanted to pass the shop on during the good economy. They moved to a vacation home they had bought without telling us. Although we were sad, we sent them off with a smile, respecting their decision. The shop became my husband's in both name and reality, and I joined him in running the cafe. Luckily, I had been thoroughly trained in everything from the menu recipes to accounting by my in-laws right after getting married, and my husband had learned similarly by their side. Our regular customers stuck with us, and the cafe's business was stable. However, as the national economy improved and my in-laws' oversight faded, my husband began to slack off at work. I'm going out for a bit. But it's almost lunchtime. Don't you see how busy we are, just the two of us here? As my husband hurried out of the shop, I showed him our daughter, sleeping snugly in her baby carrier, believing in the so-called 3-year-old myth that children shouldn't be separated from their parents before age 3. I had been bringing our young daughter to the shop. If you're gone and she gets fussy or needs a diaper change, and I have to step away, there'll be no one left to tend to the customers. It'll be a problem. It'll be fine. It's mostly regulars who come anyway. Even if they have to wait a bit or we cut corners, they won't complain with our prices. How could this happen? I was speechless at his carelessness, which seemed unbefitting of someone in the food service industry. But his point wasn't entirely wrong. We were in an unusually prosperous time, and our shop, like many others, saw customers willingly spending money. Our menu items ranged from a few to just over $10. A few mistakes here and there were tolerated by our mostly regular clientele. And even new customers seemed forgiving, given our prices. My husband believed this. The prosperity was such that customers who appreciated my hard work, balancing child rearing with the business, would even leave tips. Additionally, without widespread internet, customer reviews didn't spread easily, for better or worse. Indeed, many shops with lower quality than ours managed to thrive. Nonetheless, I wanted our customers to leave feeling satisfied and refreshed, not wanting to tarnish the reputation of the shop passed down by my in-laws. Between customers, tables, dishes, coffee, and my daughter, I managed everything, ensuring the business ran smoothly. Thanks to a small shop with no real peak times, I could manage on my own. And thanks to the economy, we made a decent profit. However, that became a problem. Hey, you. There's an order. A new customer, 2 sandwich sets with coffee. Huh, I can't leave right now. You handle it. And then the horse I bet on hit it big. I was astounded as I bustled around, only to be dismissed by my husband, who continued chatting with a regular across the counter. Originally, Patrick was in charge of the kitchen and I took care of the hall. But thinking I could handle everything, Patrick began to slack off even more. After finishing the prep and opening preparations, he would just chat with regulars or read the newspaper, watching me work as if it were someone else's problem. When I complained, he would say with a straight face, "You can handle it on your own just fine, so I don't need to bother." At times, he would even leave the shop during business hours to hang out with regulars who invited him out. Around that time, both of my in-laws passed away one after the other, and the inheritance we received probably encouraged Patrick's laziness even further. It wasn't just about slacking off at work, believing that housework and childcare were a woman's job. He wouldn't lift a finger even when our daughter cried, saying, "Change her diaper, or isn't it time for her baby food? Feed her." It became the norm for him to not help out properly, just offering lip service. As a result, I found myself juggling the triple duties of managing the shop, housework, and childcare in place of my husband, leading a dizzyingly busy life. Then, as our daughter entered elementary school, the bubble burst, and customers stopped spending money so freely. Spurred on by nudges from our regulars, Patrick finally started working again. But I had my reservations about his work ethic after years of laziness. However, I couldn't criticize him outright, fearing my comments would make him lose his motivation. He would use the shop as leverage in our discussions. Considering my in-laws' feelings, I had no choice but to back down, swallowing my complaints about Patrick, and quietly supporting him to ensure the shop's stability and sufficient sales. He continued not to help with housework or childcare, and his laziness didn't go away. But I told myself that supporting him was my duty as his wife and worked desperately hard. Now, 40 years into our marriage, the shop has survived multiple recessions and is still going strong. Our daughter, who helped out as the face of the shop, has since married a wonderful man, left home, and now is a proud mother of a young son in elementary school. Conversations with my husband have dwindled, and we both enjoy more time to ourselves. But that's not uncommon for couples our age. We still eat together and sleep together, which I think makes us closer than other mature couples. And I'm proud of having worked side by side to maintain the shop and raise our daughter, despite the ups and downs. The only thing left was the succession issue, I thought, until one rainy evening. What should we do? I didn't expect it to rain, and I don't have an umbrella. Do you have one? Nope. I don't have one either. Even though our home is close, getting drenched in this season could lead to a cold. I don't want to take that risk at our age. As I sighed, my husband tossed me the keys to the bicycle stored at the shop. Go home before it starts pouring. You'll get home before it gets too bad on the bike. I'm going out for drinks with the usual crowd anyway, so I'll lock up. He urged me to go home. So I took his word and left the shop first to start preparing dinner and a bath. About an hour later, as I took a moment to relax, I realized I had left my smartphone at the shop. Patrick had said he would be out drinking with friends today, and being without a phone, even just for a night, could be problematic if something came up. I rushed back to the shop, and in the darkness of the closed shop, I saw 2 figures moving. Thieves. I wondered whether to call the police when my hand accidentally turned on the light. Seeing the two illuminated figures, I felt like collapsing. There was my husband and an unknown beautiful woman in a dress in his arms. Why are you here? Overwhelmed by the situation and my husband's flustered demeanor, I fled the scene. The shock of witnessing my husband's betrayal caused me to panic. And I didn't notice the flashing traffic signal. The next moment, I was blinded by car headlights, felt intense pain, and then everything went black. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed. Beside me was my daughter, Megan, looking worriedly into my face. Thank goodness. Nurse, please come. My mom's awake. Piecing together the conversation between the doctor and my daughter. It seemed I had been hit by a car and hadn't woken up for 3 days. I hadn't been carrying any identification, but fortunately, a regular who witnessed the accident was able to contact my husband. After receiving a call from my husband, my daughter explained the situation to her son and husband and came to visit me that same day. A few days after regaining consciousness, with my family of 3 gathered in the examination room, I was confronted with a harsh reality by the doctor. Due to the accident, I had suffered spinal cord damage. I would not be able to walk again, nor could I bathe myself without assistance. It became clear that I would need constant care and a wheelchair for mobility. The doctor's words left me speechless. And it seemed that both my husband and daughter could not hide their shock. However, I was not weak enough to despair over this. My daughter visited me every day, supporting me both physically and emotionally. Thanks to her, I endured the difficult rehabilitation and began to adapt to life in a wheelchair. As I mentally became more resilient, I started to recall the dreadful memory of the accident. Who was that woman? What was she doing in the darkness? When my daughter, who had come to visit, brought me the smartphone she had found, I tried to contact the woman, but to no avail. As I was contemplating how to confront the person directly next time, my phone rang. It was a message from my husband, saying he wanted to talk. Was it an apology or just an excuse? Determined to resolve matters, we decided to have a discussion. The next day, my husband visited my hospital room, empty-handed. Since the announcement of my wheelchair dependency, he had not shown his face until he entered the room and immediately remarked, not with words of concern or care, but with, having a private room is quite luxurious. Suppressing my irritation at his insensitivity, I calmly said, I took advantage of the offender's goodwill. They've agreed to cover all medical expenses and other costs on top of the compensation. Well done. That must mean a hefty sum has come your way, right? What kind of way is that to talk? Don't treat me like I'm some kind of scammer. Raising my voice at my husband's lack of delicacy, he nonchalantly responded, Don't get so mad. It's a fact that a large sum of money has come in, right? Makes it easier for me to say what I want to say. What? I was speechless as my husband, seated beside the bed, pulled out a small, folded piece of paper from his pocket. Sorry to spring this on you, but I want a divorce. It was a divorce form, already filled out. What? What do you mean? I had to look twice. I couldn't comprehend my husband's actions, which were beyond what I had anticipated. What do you mean? What do you mean? I told you I had something to discuss. Are you serious? Yes. I've been fed up for a long time. I can manage the shop just fine on my own. But you're always meddling and nagging. But that shop was passed down to us by your parents. It's important to me. That's where you're wrong. That shop is mine. When I once thought about selling it because I was fed up with your nagging, you begged me not to. Because, back then, after the bubble burst, it was hard to find another job. We didn't have any qualifications. If we gave up the shop, it would have caused trouble for our daughter. I knew something was off since then. Even though the shop was passed down to me, I couldn't freely exercise my rights to it because of the family. I flinched at my husband's shouting. Blaming the family? I was dumbfounded by my husband treating us like we were obstacles in his life. He continued, venting what he had been holding in. Even when you got home, you just scowl and fuss over the books. And your excuse for not fully doing the housework was that you were busy. Well, we were both working, and someone had to handle the books. It's not just that. It's ridiculous that I have to report everything I do. Even though I'm not a child, being forced to always check in with you. As my husband listed his complaints, my trust in him crumbled, replaced by rising anger. Are you planning to ignore your own betrayal? After what you've done, I won't let you have the last word. Shouldn't communication be a given since we live together? And when you say you were just out playing, was that really the case? I pressed on as my husband stumbled over his words. That night, in the dark shop, you were embracing a woman in a dress, weren't you? If I hadn't seen that, I wouldn't have had the accident. Do you plan to be with that woman after we divorce? I confronted him, glaring. However, far from being taken aback, my husband responded without a hint of shame. Are you blaming me? Whatever you're imagining, she and I aren't involved in that way. Do you have any proof? I had no evidence. Knowing this, my husband smirked triumphantly, and I bit my lip. Any remaining affection I had vanished at the sight of his ugly smile. How terrible. Don't you care at all that I've ended up like this? It's your own carelessness that got you in that wheelchair. I don't want to deal with the hassle of caregiving. Let's get a divorce. I have no intention of cleaning up after you. Dad. There are things you just don't say. We both turned to the door, where my daughter stood, trembling with anger. How long have you been? I thought it was a serious matter between you two and decided not to intervene. But I can't stand it anymore. I heard everything. Mom ended up like this because of Dad's affair. My husband snorted dismissively at our daughter's outburst. If you're so concerned, then you take care of her. I have no intention of spending the rest of my life looking after her. I'm out. You're the worst. Say whatever you want. You're not a child anymore, so you understand the nuances of adult relationships, right? My daughter bit her lip, her eyes filled with rage. Maybe it was her anger on my behalf, but I felt my mind cool down. I looked at the divorce papers and asked my husband. What was everything I did for you all these years? I tried to support you in my own way, but now that I'm of no use, you're ready to throw me away? It's your annoying attitude that pisses me off. Being free while you've been hospitalized reminded me of the days before. I can't go back to our old life after tasting that freedom. This is a good opportunity. Let's both be free. Hearing my husband call my accident a good opportunity drained me of any remaining affection. I decided to agree to the divorce. I didn't want anything more to do with such a man, but I intended to get what I was entitled to. When I brought up the division of assets, he visibly soured. But we agreed that I would receive all compensation from the accident, as well as 60% of our savings, in exchange for leaving the house, the shop, and all household goods untouched. Let's get this over with. I'll withdraw your share now, so sign the divorce papers while I'm gone. After saying this, my husband hastily left the room. Once the room was quiet, I spoke to my daughter. I'm sorry for making you listen to all that unpleasantness. And I might be a burden until I'm settled. I'm sorry. Don't worry about it. I'm on your side, Mom. But are you sure about those terms? It's fine. I know it's sudden, but could you go to my parents' house and pack up my things? Do you know where everything is? I've got it. I've been helping clean and organize every time I visit. You've also shown me where you keep important documents, in case of an emergency. Leave it to me. After watching my daughter leave, I faced the divorce papers. I was determined not to let this end on his terms. Yet, I realized the tough reality awaiting my husband. I signed the divorce papers in front of him. He looked pleased with himself, quickly snatching up the document. Okay. We're strangers now. Seeing how genuinely happy he was made me quietly say, I'm sorry to dampen your spirits, but you're probably going to regret this. There's no way that's going to happen. If anyone's going to regret anything, it'll be you. No one wants to deal with an old woman in a wheelchair, and you, being unable to do anything, might as well end up senile. But don't you dare contact me. We're strangers now. Take care, then. After watching my husband leave with such pomp, I received a message from my daughter saying she had finished packing up my belongings. The decluttering she had done as part of job hunting seemed to have paid off, allowing her to finish quickly. She even sent me photos of the contents for confirmation. The box with my valuables was properly included. With this, I didn't care much about losing the rest. Just as I was sending a message of thanks to my daughter, I received a notification from a friend and regular customer that she was on her way to visit me. Perfect timing. Let's add a flower to the thorny path my husband has chosen. The visitor, known in the neighborhood for her love of gossip, chatted away without my prompting. According to her, my husband had been bragging about winning a bet on the lottery. It seems that immediately after our divorce was finalized, he took a well-known beauty from a local nightclub to a resort. Based on the description, it was probably the same woman in a dress I saw that night. She also mentioned that my shop hadn't been opened once since my accident. I was so surprised to hear about this from your daughter when I ran into her. What in the world happened? As she looked at me with a mix of curiosity and concern, I tearfully explained how we ended up divorced. By the end of my story, her eyes were filled with both sympathy and anger. She held my hand, left me with words of strong support, and left the room. Once she was out of sight, I quietly chuckled to myself, glad for the opportunity to apply some eye drops. Now, let's see what happens next. About a month after the accident, I was discharged from the hospital. A few months later, having adjusted to life in a wheelchair, I found myself in a large shopping mall. It was a weekday, so the food court was quite empty. As I took a seat and relaxed for a moment, I was approached. Hey, isn't that you, Cindy? It is you, right? Turning around, I saw my ex-husband, who had aged significantly in just a few months. His once dark hair was now peppered with white, and he wore a wrinkled shirt and chinos, looking every bit the part of a worn-out old man. It was clear he was struggling with the daily grind. In contrast, I had gotten a short haircut shortly after being discharged, which made me feel refreshed. I also wore makeup today. I might be vain, but I believe I look younger than my actual age. You've changed a lot, haven't you? When I was married to you, I hardly had any time for myself because of all the housework and the shop. At my sarcastic remark, my husband forced a smile and said, So, what? Now you're bored to death? Before you go senile, how about helping out with work? I thought so. Huh? You're struggling with the cafe, aren't you? My direct hit froze his forced smile. It seems I was spot on. I figured as much. After all, I was the one managing the kitchen, the hall, and the accounting. Indeed. My husband had neglected the shop during the bubble period to play around. And even when he returned, his skills had significantly deteriorated. He couldn't remember cooking procedures or prioritize tasks. And he even struggled with the cash register. I had been preemptively supporting him, taking care of everything from cooking and customer service to managing orders and stock, and even handling the tax returns. It was only natural that things wouldn't go smoothly without me. Did you enjoy your trip? Why don't you ask her to help you? I don't know anything about that woman anymore. When I asked her to help with the shop, she ran away. Half in anger, my husband spoke. But it was clear that the woman he involved himself with was from the entertainment business. Having provided only slight favors to my ex-husband, who was a wealthy customer, it was clear that he was the only one who took their relationship seriously. Ironically, as my husband himself admitted at that time, their affair was just a fling. Patrick continued bitterly. I don't know why, but even the regular ladies have stopped coming. They used to practically live in the shop despite hating it. It makes no sense. It's obvious, isn't it? You've made enemies out of your regulars. What? It seems he resented their lengthy stays due to their chatty nature, but those ladies, who spent a long time in the shop and thus spent more money, were our valued customers. It appears that the friend who visited me had effectively spread the word about my husband's betrayal. Those women were my friends too. Did you really think they would continue to come as usual after their friend had been wronged by her husband and ended up in an accident? A shop run by a master who cheated on his wife and abandoned her was bound to become an object of disgust. That he couldn't understand this was baffling. I sighed in frustration. We're short-staffed, and we've been in the red lately. At this rate, the shop's going to go under. Well, I'm a stranger to you now, aren't I? It's none of my concern. As I attempted to leave, my husband grabbed my wheelchair. Hey, wait a minute. You must have done something. Otherwise? Why would everything suddenly start going wrong? Just as I recoiled from his desperate demeanor, a voice intervened. Dad? What are you doing? Turning towards the voice, I saw my daughter standing there with a puzzled look. Ah. Megan. My ex-husband quickly let go of the wheelchair. Trying to act as if nothing was amiss, he approached our daughter with a forced smile. I know it's sudden, but could you come to live with me? What? The shop is short-staffed, and I can't manage the house on my own. If you, the former star of our shop, could come back, we could fill the gap Cindy left. If you agree, your whole family can live in our house. We have spare rooms, so there's no worry. You wouldn't need to pay rent, and ultimately, I would leave the shop to you. How about it? It's not a bad offer, is it? Dad. With a smile, my daughter firmly responded. You must be joking. What? You push all the work and responsibilities onto Mom, doing nothing yourself. And now, after everything, you have the audacity to play the father card and expect your daughter to take care of you? That's way too convenient. My husband was speechless as my daughter laid out her scathing criticism without hesitation. Have you forgotten how you behaved while Mom was hospitalized? After all you've done, how can you say such things? You casually discarded a wife who supported you desperately for 40 years. Do you think I'd live with someone like that? Honestly, I'd rather end this father-daughter relationship than deal with you. Even if you offered me a fortune, I'd refuse. Clearly, my ex-husband hadn't expected such a vehement rejection from his own daughter and was stunned. I was out of my mind back then. At least you realize that now. But I still won't live with you. Why not? Because we're already living with Mom. What? Indeed. When I was discharged, my daughter had taken me back to her home. And, after proposing the idea of living together, which the whole family supported, I gratefully accepted their offer to stay. Then all the more reason to live with me. You wouldn't need to worry about caring for me. Unfortunately for you, we're not just tolerating living together. What? She's nothing but a burden, unable to do anything. Have you forgotten what the doctor said? My lower body might be impaired, but my upper body is still strong. Since we started living together, I've taken over cooking duties.
Ah.
It seemed my words jogged my ex-husband's memory. Besides, the caregiving isn't as intensive as you think. It's mostly about helping with baths or transferring from the car to the wheelchair. We were struggling to cook for ourselves due to both of us working, and our son being at an age where he eats a lot. We were just getting by on rice. But now, thanks to Mom cooking a balanced meal complete with delicious coffee after every meal, our family of 3 is in great health. It's no surprise, really, given her 40 years in the food industry. The taste is top-notch, and the light meals she made during her cafe days were popular too. Seeing my daughter's beaming smile left my husband frozen in astonishment. As I exchanged looks with my daughter and attempted to leave, my husband suddenly dropped to his knees and hands in front of me, crying out with tears in his eyes. I was wrong. I've realized how important our daily life and the shop were after you left. Please, remarry me. I sighed deeply. His actions couldn't change how I felt. Absolutely not. I respectfully decline. As I declared my refusal, wait. Please wait, my ex-husband reached out desperately towards me. My daughter swiftly moved my wheelchair away. Soon, prompted by my refusal, my ex-husband began to cause a scene and was taken away by several security guards. Not wanting to be involved with my ex-husband any further, we decided to leave the mall and dine elsewhere. After the ordeal, I was surprisingly at peace. 6 months later, I learned through friends that my husband's cafe had closed down. At the same time, he sold his house and attempted to increase his funds through gambling, only to suffer huge losses. Now, he's living frugally in an older public housing unit, surviving on his pension. Meanwhile, I've been using my free time to run cooking classes regularly. All that's needed are the ingredients. The location can be anywhere with a kitchen setup. Most of my classes are at elementary schools, serving as community engagement activities. And some schools have even started cooking clubs with me as a guest instructor. With the current boom in retro cafes, traditional cafe menus are very popular. Despite the unexpected accident that cost me the use of my legs, I've found unparalleled happiness in my later years. I intend to live the rest of my life as I please, reclaiming the 40 years of myself.